let us dive right into it and talk about the major legislation that is passing this week, or that has been passed this week and signed into law by President Biden. And that is the Respect for Marriage Act. So I'm going to show us a little clip here real quick. It's from USA Today, and we'll give you a little bit of the overview, and we will jump from there.
The White House yesterday, President Biden signing the Respect for Marriage Act during a ceremony on the South Lawn. The law requires states to recognize same-sex and interracial marriages, even if they were performed in another state. The president emphasized bipartisan support for the legislation and called it a vital step toward equality, liberty, and justice.
Hey, thanks for watching. Don't miss.
You're good. Don't need to listen to that guy. But so that is the overview. That is the broad strokes what is going on with this bill. So let me break it down for you a little bit more in depth. The Respect for Marriage Act was kind of the stopgap, the preventive stopgap to the Supreme Court overturning Obergefell, which is the Supreme Court case that has allowed for legal gay marriage across the country. Prior to Obergefell in 2013, I believe is when that decision came out. Gay marriage was state by state decision. So again, where we come back to this federalist approach, these things where things are delegated to the states based on the Constitution. I believe that's the Ninth Amendment. All that stuff, right? We have the application of this in the same way from gun laws, now we have it in abortion laws. And those two things alone are bad examples of federalism gone awry. But there are good examples of federalism, especially on the local level. When you look at city governments, getting my master's, we definitely learned about Philadelphia government and the good and the bad and the ugly, and just talking about each level and the localities and the mayors and the local offices having a more influence is good in certain aspects when they're passing progressive legislation. But again, that comes with the understanding that in other red places, they're passing Republican legislation. So with that being said, this was the stopgap. Like, this was the idea that it's going to be, okay, we're going to pass this and we're going to protect people from losing the right to have same-sex marriage. It also protects interracial marriage, which again is pretty insane that we have to do that in 2022, basically 2023. But it's also not wholly unreasonable to predict that was something that was on the docket based on the leaked the Dobbs decision that was leaked, the brief that was leaked from Justice Alito, which literally said that we're targeting the cases that protected the birth control, protected same-sex marriage, and interracial marriage. So in practicality, as much as it might seem like, oh, this seems like kind of outlandish, like, is this really an issue? Yeah, it is, and it possibly could be. So good on the Democrats for passing this, and I'll frankly give some credit to the Republicans that crossed over. Now, again, it's not all of them. I think this is one of those things where you start to realize, like, this is not like a 99% of people I should say Congress people are passing this. There were still like a solid portion of Republicans that are voting against this bill. And it makes no sense. I mean, it makes no sense from my point of view, right? From their point of view, all these folks are the ones that are saying that, like, no, we're not homophobic. No, we're not transphobic. No, we're not racist. But yeah, I don't know that I could vote to protect interracial marriage. Yeah, I don't know that I could vote to protect same-sex marriage. Like, why not? Like, none of it is taking away anybody else's rights. Like, that's always the trick to this. Is it's just providing equality for everyone. And I just don't understand the ideology driven behind like undermining it consistently over and over and over again, and otherizing people based on it. It's something that I just never understood one way or the other. Even growing up Catholic, I just never had this disconnect where I didn't understand or empathize, at least on some level, with people that were gay. I mean, as a kid, I didn't know about people that were transgender just because being sheltered in that environment. But when I went to public school, when I moved, when I got older, you're around people and you learn things, and you just engage with people, and you just, on a basic level, can develop that I may not live the same life as you, but I can understand that you just want to be happy. You just want to have a good life like everybody else. And this piece can help you do that. And it's just providing equality. Now, why am I not jumping up and down saying this is the best thing ever? Well, the thing is, and this is the tricky part of this bill that I think people are overlooking. With the passage of this Respect for Marriage Act, that does not protect same-sex couples getting married everywhere. What it does instead, if you get married now, let's just say right now, we'll take Senator Mitch McConnell's area, Kentucky. If you took Kentucky, you got married as a same-sex couple right now, and a year down the line, Obergefell is overturned. Again, remember that the Supreme Court doesn't actually give a shit about precedent. So likely that is a very possible thing that could happen. If that happened, this bill prevents the state of Kentucky, or any state for that matter, that doesn't recognize gay marriage, from not recognizing that person's marriage, because it was done under this protection. It was done with this law protecting that right and carrying it forward. Sounds great, right? But the issue is that if you are in Kentucky, or if you're in a red state, because this is frankly where this would happen, or even a purple state with a red legislator, like someplace like Wisconsin was, where it's not really a red state, but it is gerrymandered out the wazoo so that you have state legislators overrun by Republicans. Frankly, Pennsylvania could have been the same thing if we didn't get Shapiro and we didn't get better maps in Pennsylvania. What happens is, if you were living in this red state, you're not married now, Obergefell falls, and I believe the case for same-sex, or for interracial marriages, the case was Loving, I think. If both of those were overturned, the precedent is thrown out by the Supreme Court, which, again, 6-3. It is very likely, or possible at least, that this would happen. A year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, if this was overturned, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, and you went to get married as a same-sex couple, that would not, well, I should say this. If the state does not recognize it, this is the real twist here. If these states decide to not recognize gay marriage, if they outlaw gay marriage, which, again, based on the interpretation of the Supreme Court of federalism and the supremacy, so like the way that structures up, the federal court or the federal government has the ultimate say. But if the federal government says, well, actually, we're going to defer, then the states can ban gay marriage again if Obergefell goes to the wayside. And then people in those states where the state decides to outlaw it, like abortion, they cannot get married. Same-sex couples would not be able to get married. Interracial couples would not be able to get married if that case fell too. So this is where it's not, it's great, but it's not the silver bullet. It's not Civil Rights Act level protections, which is really what we need. And again, I have so many people that are impacted by this that I know. There's so many people just on my social media feed that I've met over the last 3, 4, or 5 years that I've made, political contact with, just, knocking on their door, learning from them. Someone like Malcolm Kenyatta coming on the show, people like Brian Sims. There's folks like this that are at the White House, and it's awesome to see. I saw, Jonathan Lovitz. There's a bunch of people that I've connected with and I've met that I know personally are affected by this bill passing in the positive. I just freaking wish that I could just say, we have civil rights protections for gay people, for transgender people, for non-binary people, but we don't yet. And that is the next fight to continue moving the ball forward. This is a great step towards that. And I think it is worth stating that this is some of the most influential and progressive pieces throughout the last 2 years of Biden's administration. This is some of the most, and I don't say this lightly. I don't say this as this big Biden stan. Some of what Biden has done, and I say some of it because, again, you can go back just 2 weeks ago and me going ballistic about the unions, the railroad strikes, right? But some of what Biden has done in the last 2 years can amount to some of the most progressive legislative agenda that has probably been implemented since LBJ. I'm trying to put it nicely, but I can't. The bastardization of the old school Democratic Party from the neoliberalism era onward has made it so that we have been so weak as to tackle these great things about this country. I was talking when I was getting a haircut today. I was talking to the barber, talking about the fall of these great progressive ideals of the New Deal, the Great Society, and fighting for something like I don't understand. I really just don't understand it. And I am disconnect this from a criticism of Joe Biden here, but I'm just saying this as I don't understand how the priority is not to pass civil rights protections based on sexual orientation at a minimum. At a minimum. The overwhelming majority of Americans support gay people's right to get married. It is not even a question at this point. Put it in the federal law. Put it in, sign, seal, deliver it to frickin' Joe Biden's desk and have him put it into law, because it is so basic. It is so clear that is what we need. It is something that will actually provide a constitutional right to people for their civil protections. I am grateful that this passed. I am hopeful that we can do more. I just hope that we don't lose sight that this is not the end. This is the beginning of something. It is hard when you haven't had real fighters for a while on some of this stuff. But it is it's really it's just tough. I mean, it's tough to like really be like, yeah, yeah, and then it's not fully what it is. Question in chat. The Respect for Marriage Act just ensures that states where gay marriage is outlawed have to recognize the marriage that happened in other states, right? Yeah. So that's the other piece of it. If you get married in New York and you move to, maybe I'll stop picking out Kentucky, but Kentucky, and they decided to outlaw it, yeah, then they have to, by federal law, recognize that marriage. And it's the same thing where, like, if you got married now and it got overturned, they would have to respect that and acknowledge that legally. But you get into gray areas from there where it's like, well, okay, they could legally. I mean, this kind of lends itself to a more of a broader narrative of combating racism in today's society, right? Like, in theory, there are no laws, and again, I am not a believer of this, but in theory, there are no laws explicitly, because again, we have the Civil Rights Act, explicitly targeting black people in this country disproportionately to put them down, right? Because it would be deemed unconstitutional based on the Civil Rights Act protections. But we all know, if you're watching this show, you're listening to my voice 10 years from now, we know that the history of slavery, the history of Jim Crow, the implementation of laws, the nuance of laws, how they're written, how they're implemented, does impact folks differently. And in America, has disproportionately affected African American people. So, if we can take that extrapolation and say, yeah, we'll recognize in the red state here, we'll recognize your marriage, right? We'll recognize it legally. But that doesn't mean that you're entitled to all the same services. And then what happens is then you have more Supreme Court cases, which again, the Supreme Court is stacked against same-sex couples. It is stacked against transgender individuals. It is stacked against all of the anything that I can think to say to you, it is stacked against the proposal of Medicare for all. You could never pass a Green New Deal agenda with a 6-3 Supreme Court conservative majority, because it's about their ideology. It is not about precedent. It is not about the law. It is not about interpreting the Constitution. It is about their damn agenda. There's been resurfaced videos just in the last couple of weeks. I saw it on Twitter. I knew it when he was getting confirmed, but dude, there are videos of Brett Kavanaugh in 2000 cheerleading for George W. Bush, basically for the Supreme Court to hand George W. Bush the election. I mean, this is not the Supreme Court is not impartial. That concept is dead. It was never true, but it's most certainly not true now. So, as an activist, I'm wearing my HRC shirt right here. As an activist, for me as an ally, for you watching, you might be someone that is impacted by this law. Celebrate it. Be happy. Be enthusiastic. I've seen all of my political friends that are at the White House. I'm a little jealous. It's awesome. But we can't miss the forest for the trees, because we have to keep moving the ball forward. We have to keep pushing it forward. If you're in Pennsylvania, if you're a state rep and you're not running on enshrining civil rights on a state level for gay and trans individuals and non-binary individuals, then you are not focused on what needs to be done for those communities. So it's bread and butter. Like, again, that is the easiest thing that you can do in advocating for. And yet many people don't do that. And so that is the way to move it forward. Now, from you and me, the average Joe, we don't have the ability yet to pass legislation ourselves. Call your representative. Get engaged. I swear, calling your actual representative, emailing them, calling's better. Pressure them on supporting stuff like this, supporting things like the Respect for Marriage Act on a state level, supporting things that will actually enshrine rights to you, your neighbors, your kids, your friends, whoever it is. Everybody deserves equality, and that shouldn't be a question. We're fighting for it, but that shouldn't be a question in the 21st century, and it still is. So we'll keep moving that fight forward. And I'm hopeful. I'm grateful. Again, Biden doing that, the Congress passing it, and for the few Republicans that crossed over. And we gotta get more than just a few.